Thank you for being here today. This is SPAR's Better and Better podcast. We are going to be talking about the Realtor Advantage today. And one interesting advantage is SPAR serves a pretty large geographical area, 12 counties, stretching well beyond St. Paul, both north and south, all the way to the Wisconsin border. So jumping into this conversation with me today, I'm Jennifer Kovacic, the Communications Director here at SPAR. Will be Brianne Lawrence and Mike Olson. And I would love for you two to just introduce yourselves a little bit. Tell us how long you've been a realtor, where you work, the size of your brokerages, and then we'll get into some questions.
Well, go ahead, you can go.
I am Brianne Lawrence, and I am out of Lakeville and with Edge Real Estate Services, the broker of Edge Real Estate Services. Edge has been around for 11 years. I've been in the business for a little over 20. I have 22 realtors between my traditional brokerage and my referral network.
Nice.
I am Mike Olson, and I am the broker of Keller Williams Premier Realty out in Woodbury. And we've got 217 agents there as of today. I've been in the real estate business, well, they call it a long time, but 42 years. Actually just became a realtor emeritus, so that makes me officially old.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that was it. That was an exciting accomplishment. But, I mainly sell. Being broker, I don't manage the office. In my career, we've probably sold over 4,000 houses, so we've been around for a long time.
Nice. Well, as I mentioned, Realtor Advantage. So let's talk a little bit about that. SPAR is here to serve members. We know a number of members come in the door. But from a brokerage standpoint, how do you use SPAR as a resource for your office, yourself, for your agents? I'm really curious to kind of know all three and what you guys do with that.
Go for it. Take it away.
I'm a big believer, obviously, I was a president years ago, and been a Realtor of the Year and been highly involved, throughout my career. I like to teach my agents when they come into the business the orientation I love, because that's their first, exposure to it. And it's a whistle wetter. I like them in their first year or two in the business just to be attending events. I don't really want them on a committee yet. I want them to sell houses and learn the business, but I want them at events. I want them participating in things, getting to see other realtors, learning that networking is so important. Once you get to about year 3, I really try to push them towards committees. I want them to get involved. I think at year 3, that's a clue that you're going to make it in this business, and now it's time to be part of your industry. And then I really push when you get to that, 8, 9, 10 years in the business, I expect you to start wanting leadership opportunities. And if it isn't in SPAR, is it becoming a CRS, getting involved in the state association or something? But I really believe at the point in time that you're making a career and a good living out of this, we also belong giving back and learning how important it is to be part of that is so important to me. So that's really the lesson I give them from the first day they meet me.
Sure. I love hearing that. And I do hear from a lot of realtors that really being able to give back in some capacity, whether locally in the association or in the community, is such a helpful thing, not only to be involved and know the area where you're working, but it also helps in business.
When they know you, when you're involved in a transaction and they already know you, there's a huge difference in how that transaction's going to go. And our reputation, I always tell my agents, it's cool that you got business cards, but the really only business card that matters is yourself and how you present yourself. And so you need to be involved. And yes, you pick a community event. I'm involved with the Woodbury Community Foundation. I love that. But you need to be careful on how much you're involved in as well. Picking a committee or something to be involved in at the realtor level is just so important.
Sure. I think it's one of the best things about the career itself is that you have the flexibility in your schedule to be able to volunteer and give back to the community and get yourself out there and be aware of what's going on so that you can help with some of the problems, which I hate to call it problems, but let's be honest, that's one of the things that SPAR does for us is they have a huge advocacy efforts. They have people that know where to go if there's something that comes up in the community and there's maybe a problem that we need to solve, or if there's an issue with housing, if we can bring it to SPAR, they have the right contacts to be able to push it through and maybe help with some of those problems.
And just to expand on what you're saying, Brianne, I think SPAR offers a lot of resources and guidance in some of those areas, but even the networking done between brokers and agents within the umbrella, you really can learn a lot from each other too.
Absolutely.
Some problem solving.
Well, what's fun is as you get to know each other, when there's issues that are out there, you're talking, how you're talking about the issues. We went through a lot of stuff last year, and talking to other brokers and helping them understand how we're teaching our agents what we're doing. It's just such an invaluable communication, opportunity. But you have to meet people to be able to know who you're going to talk to.
Yep.
And you're a good example of that, because I think about, I first met you on the Charitable Foundation, and then I continuously saw your names when the foreclosure market was out there. And whenever I had an issue, I could pick up the phone and I could say, hey, Mike, what's going on with this property? Or can you tell me about this property? And I don't know if you remember that, but that was
I do.
15 years ago, probably at this point.
And it's really one of the reasons why my reputation is so important. And it is that networking that people know. People always say to me, well, why should I choose you? And I said, because the transaction's going to go well, because I've done a good job of making sure people know who I am and know how I work. And it starts with being involved in things like this.
Absolutely.
Right. You're both reminding me, when I sit in the communications committee that I run, one of my favorite parts is just hearing the different members that make up that committee talk about, hey, do you have a name for such and such? I need another resource. My person's on vacation. And just being able to share ideas of homes in an area or somebody who can step in. And it really is one of those intangible benefits that comes from being involved.
Right. So sometimes the networking isn't just with the agents across the table. It might be networking with the staff at SPAR, the bilingual staff at SPAR. It's nice to have that community that you can go to. And if you need an attorney, if you need an appraiser, if you need a contact, I find value in that as a small broker is if there's a question that I don't have an answer to, I can call SPAR and likely somebody there will have a resource for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you raise a good point. You're from different size brokerages. I know, Brianne, you're smaller. Mike, you're a larger brokerage. How does SPAR play a part in that? I realize you may have different needs for the resources available. Can you talk to that a little bit?
It starts from the foundation. It starts from the ground up. So one of the best words of advice I was given was to join the association and start local, because if you start local, you can see people face to face. Whereas when you go to the state and when you go to national, it's a little bit more challenging. And now everything's over Zoom. We've perfected that. But you can come in the doors of SPAR and you can see that friendly smile that can tell you what to do next. There's a broker handbook on the website. So the website is an invaluable tool that we use on a very regular basis, whether that's the forms that you can get from SPAR, the calendar, what's going on. Is there continuing ed? The on-demand services that are here are outstanding, meeting people where they're at. You can take your continuing ed from your living room or from your couch or wherever you are. But there's a lot of benefits to that. You can go to one place. You don't have to go to 12 different websites to find 12 different classes. You can just land here. So it depends. I mean, it could be anything from as little as continuing ed to as big as, I need to create a new employee handbook. Where do I start?
Sure.
One of the things I love is when we're doing a team meeting at our office, I'll bring up a topic and the number of people that'll say, we just talked about that at our committee meeting. And it's fun because then it's when I remember how many people I have in that room that are on various committees. But the topic that I want them to understand, they're able to help interject with it. And it's because they're participating in board activities and then sharing it with each other.
And different opinions, which is nice too, is because sometimes as brokers, we inflict our opinions on our agents, but they can get outside opinions and bring them in, and more knowledge, the better in anything that you're doing. So I think that that's a great thing too.
Yeah, it makes for a great conversation.
Absolutely.
Sure. Well, Brianne, you and I had talked a little bit earlier about how...
You guys talked earlier?
We did.
Well, I didn't know we were doing any backroom talks on this.
Well, we're going to fill you in now, Mike.
Okay, I'm just checking.
You won't be out of the loop. But we talked a little bit earlier about how SPAR members may perceive SPAR if they aren't really one of those members that come in the door. And the response was new member orientation, which you alluded to earlier, is a great way to come in, but also the super key. Mm-hmm. My question for you is, where would you recommend people start if they are kind of on the fence of maybe I want to get involved, or I just don't really think of the association as something that, has been out there for me? Where's that first step?
Well, can I jump in on the super key?
Yes, please.
First, I was the president the year we brought those lock boxes on, so it tells you how long ago. And I was the deciding vote. It was one of the few times that we had a 50-50 vote on our board, one of the most amazing things that I think we did was bringing in the super key, the security and the safety that it offers our clients. So when you wonder what do you get involved in and what kind of things, that's a leadership decision that we made, a couple of decades ago, but so smart when you know the difference between the lockboxes. Again, I tell my agents right up front, and you can see we probably have 20 agents that are very involved. I forget all of them, until all of a sudden they start talking. It's like, oh, yeah, so you are listening to me. Or I'll go to the realtor convention, and all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 of my agents that are there that I didn't know were coming. So we really do talk about it on a regular basis, and I talk about the value and the reasons. Mm-hmm. One of my agents came to me, and when we were going through this MLS, and can you get MLS without being a board member? And it's not a service we'll offer out of my office, but we had a great half-hour conversation, and I said, you know what? Join me in a meeting sometime so I can show you why it's so valuable. Just give me that little bit of time. And it was a fun conversation because he didn't understand the value. He simply only thought MLS was the value. And that's our fault then, right? Are we not giving them enough ideas of what else we do? The advocacy, like you said, and I'm a big believer in RPAC. Years ago, the city of Richfield passed a resolution without telling anybody that they were even having it on the agenda that any property that was vacant a year must be torn down. And it wasn't maybe torn down. The word was must be torn down. They didn't tell the Minneapolis Association about it. We would have had jurisdiction on attending the hearing. We heard about it, made a couple of phone calls, and got them to put it back on the agenda for the next meeting, where they changed the word must to may. As we pointed out to them, every interior townhouse that's vacant for a year in your ordinance must be torn down. Now that makes more end units, so that'd be valuable, but not helpful, because they wouldn't be cited or anything like that. And the reason they passed the ordinance was because there was one property they didn't like. Well, why don't you just deal with the property? Well, that's why advocacy and us being at the table is so important, and it's not just what happens in DC. We're out there fighting for you here locally, and you need to be involved in that and understand that. Sitting on the Government Affairs Committee for the, local here, you learn so much, and we've got so many communities, and then that's when we ask you to be part of that community so you can tell us what you're hearing. Then we know when to get up and get running. And same as the state level, same at, NAR, and, I fly all over the country, for meetings. I love that. I love advocacy. But everybody that says to us, I don't want to be involved in politics, real estate is politics. Everything we do, every document we sign, it's all about politics. So you need to be part of the table, and you need to be purple. We're not Democrat or Republican when we're being an advocate for you. We are the purple party. We love that and believe that. And so get involved. That's what we really say. That being involved at a local level and being able to call us and say, hey, this is on the agenda. Should we have an opinion? And let government affairs get involved.
And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, where's a good place to start? Bring people to a meeting, attend a committee, attend something that's of interest. There's enough committees here that anybody can find anything that they're passionate about. That's how I started with the Charitable Foundation. As I said, I like giving back. I like helping people. I like being out in my community. And I think it was Tracy Douglas said, you should join the Charitable Foundation. That would be a great place for you to start. And then I was there for several years and worked my way to leadership, kind of on your plan. And it was so telling of you really don't know what you don't know. And SPAR really does have different tools to put in your toolbox in any aspect that you're looking at, whether it is advocacy or giving back or the YPN. There's something that caters to everybody.
And the commitment doesn't necessarily have to be huge. I know this summer there's a Saints baseball game. An easy way to come and have fun and network socially with folks. There are, different visits to breweries around town. Again, low-hanging fruit, kind of a fun way to engage, meet some people, and then, come in the building and see what you might want to do. And when you talk about government affairs, we have a strong staff team at SPAR. There's a strong committee. But I think if members know of something going on in their community that they think would be helpful for SPAR to know, a phone call or an email is a great way to just learn what's going on in that city too, and just share some of that information.
Well, and sometimes you don't want to attach your name to it because it seems too far left or too far right or something outside of your comfort zone. It's a good place to become neutral of, like you said, the purple party. But you could also go to our government drawing a blank, our GAs and say, hey, we wanted to bring this issue to you, and they bring the issue forth. If you're not comfortable with that, you can put somebody as a buffer between you and whatever the problem might be.
Yep.
Well, we're proud in our office. One of our agents is on the city council in her town, and we've got a state senator, in our office. So we believe in being involved, but the key is whatever you pick something, and don't pick 5 things. Sell real estate, but pick one thing and see what you like. And as Brianne said, it's not where you're going to ever stay forever. You leave your mark along the way. At this point in time in my career, I just, I meet with every new president and say, whatever you need me to do, I'll gladly do it. I don't sit on any committees that they don't ask me to sit on. I kind of let them pick where they need me. I've been on the board of governors for the RMLS for several years for the St. Paul seat that they have. Before I had a Keller Williams seat there. There's been a lot of things that have gone on, in that world. And that's why they asked me to go back, was the things that were going on. They said, Mike, this is a spot we need you, right now. And so as they get to know you, as Brianne said, they'll also give you advice on, what, this might be a great fit and we could really use you, even if it's just for a year that you're over there while something's going on. So leave your mark on this industry. The key is, though, you made friends while you're doing it. So you're actually helping your career by being involved.
That's true. That's very true. And people see that. People see the good work that you're putting into it, whether it's other agents or your consumers. They'll see that you're actively engaged and that you know more than just, I buy and sell houses for people. And I think that that's the important piece of it is, how did you get there? How do you know what you know? And it's a good way to be able to reflect on that.
Yeah, it's part of every presentation I do to a buyer or seller is explain what I'm a part of and why. And because I think that, when you're interviewing each other, you need to know them and they need to know you. They need to know your heart and what you're passionate about. And they certainly all know what's been happening, out there. And so being able to explain my story and my mission, in it is fun. I'm proud of it, but everybody should have something they need to say.
Yeah. And I agree with you on more so than ever in the last 5 years, our industry has been under attack, if you will. And some agents don't even know that it's happening. But if you are active at SPAR, you have the information. You have it firsthand. You probably even have it before it even hits the media, which is nice because then you're on top of it instead of behind it with your consumers.
Well, and I love to tell the agents in my office, everybody feels like all this change that's going on. It's not change. Actually, we've, in Minnesota, had these rules forever. We're doing it right. We're doing it proper. I find it exciting, to have this going on. There are states that didn't understand. There were 13 states that didn't even have agency rules. So these changes have been fun, but it's also weekly, all year last year, we were talking about it and going through scripts and how we're going to deal with this. And what's fun is, they understand that I was going to meetings to make sure that we were saying those words right, but at the same time encouraging them to get involved. And then they start saying, well, we talked about, what about this presentation and stuff. And so that networking that you do when you're just hanging with other realtors is just so amazing.
And I think that's what's amazing about SPAR is they're extremely innovative. So if we don't have a program that fits in your little box, they'll create one. They'll go out there and they will find something to make sure that our members are met where they're at, what makes them comfortable. One of the things that they launched recently was a wellness program. Being in real estate, I think when Robin Williams' son talked at our Unite conference, he had said that real estate was in the top 3 of mental crisis careers, outside of police and paramedics and the first rescue people. And it makes sense. It's really stressful. It can be really stressful, but it can be really fun too. And I think it's so important that we talk about mental health and we talk about safety and we talk about these things, and it all starts here on your local level, which is so important.
One of the neat things too with that wellness group you're mentioning, Brianne, is that it's peer-to-peer. So staff really isn't involved. It's SPAR members sitting and having a forum really with other SPAR members to just talk about what are those stressors, what are you hearing, how are you navigating a difficult time. So it is, I think, a great resource. And I think to your point, there are a lot of things that have come from members and really opened the door for other members to get involved.
And kind of going back to the wide territory. I mean, you're in Woodbury area, I'm in Lakeville. And so our markets are a little bit different on what's going on, but I can call Mike and say, hey, what's going on with that market? And maybe that's what you're experiencing with the wellness group too, is everybody has different needs. Everybody has different things that are happening in their marketplaces. So it's a nice place to be able to find opinions from somebody different than just who's at my brokerage or who's at your brokerage.
And what's fun is I haven't even heard of the wellness group, and I'm around all the time. So that's, again, that's our job, is to figure out how to make sure we can tell you what we have, and, can we get you to open that email
Right.
when we send it.
Because realtors don't read.
Well, and I always say to Tracy Douglas, if there's someplace you really think I should go, would you just give me a quick call?
Yeah. You and the other 7,500 members.
Yeah, I'm not asking for much, but it is. I mean, even if I read that email every week, but are you reading it at the speed of slow down and see what's amazing that we're doing?
Right.
Maybe marking it unread and reading it when you have a little time would make more sense.
I was in an event last week here at SPAR, and one of the attendees said that she puts on her calendar, reads SPAR newsletters, and 1 or 2 Saturdays a month she goes through and reads everything and then adds things to her calendar. And I thought it was kind of genius.
Yeah.
It was something I hadn't heard before. But really, there is the wellness group. There are book clubs. There's a SPAR Toastmaster speaking group. There are things that really you don't even have to necessarily engage or commit to, such as National Night Out. We give $50 gift cards to different realtors who request to be part of a community event. So there are just so many ways that you can easily get involved. And I will say one of the things I hear from a lot of members is that it's kind of an unexpected benefit that it helps them in their business. And I mean, I'm guessing from this conversation that you too see that, but I don't know if everybody always thinks that way, and I think that's kind of a neat added bonus.
I think it's incredibly nice, too, for people that are coming off. Maybe this is a second career for them, and they were a W-2 employee, and so they're used to be regimented and told what to do. And then all of a sudden they're launched into real estate. They sit at their desk with their computer, and they say, now what? Well, the now what is go to SPAR. They'll keep you busy. I mean, they can keep you as busy as you want to be or as lightweight as you want. You can show up once a year. You could show up 12 times a year. You can attend an event, again, see what other realtors are doing within your area. Maybe not even in your area. Maybe you want to see what somebody up north is doing, and it's different than what you could bring down south. But it is a nice technique on how to boastfully brag about what you're doing and not actually be the one bragging, if that makes sense.
Well, I always tell my agents, you have a better chance of making a living if you leave your house.
Yeah.
So
don't be a secret agent.
Yeah. And so go to the office and hang out in a common area where you meet everybody. Go to a meeting, go to an event, whatever. There's ways of networking and things will happen. But if you sit at home, probably nothing will happen. And then when you're, a year later and you're leaving the business, what did you do? And again, that's why I don't say join a committee, but go to an event.
Right.
Just wet your whistle to what is this career, what is a realtor, and why is it important to be proud of that? And so, in Learning Day, is it Friday that it comes in? Is it every Friday?
It's every Monday, 5:30.
Okay.
But to your point, there are a lot of things that go out. Education newsletters go out on Thursdays. Advocacy newsletters go out once a month.
Broker slides.
There are broker slides that go out 1 to 2 times a month. So there is a lot of communication that goes out the door. And maybe Fridays is when you want to put
maybe
your
Friday's
calendar
my read
for
day.
your read
But
day.
it is, open it up and read it and then pick something.
And I think it's intimidating. People think, oh, I don't want to walk into a group full of people I don't know. But the reality is half the people in that group don't know anybody either. So it's a good place to be intimidated if you're going to go and be intimidated, because everybody's kind of in that same boat. They want to have a conversation. They want to work on their elevator speech, if you will. They want to see what others are doing. And it's a really good neutral place to do so, judgment free.
And everybody in that room's made a decision that this is a career.
Right.
I mean, that's what's fun.
It's a choice.
Yeah. If you start doing those kind of things, that's when you've announced to everybody, I plan on making this a career. It's not a hobby, and I'm all in, and I'm going to do the things and the steps
And I would
takes.
love to see statistics on that. I don't think we have any, but I would even bet to imagine that the people that are volunteering are in it to win it. They're going to be here for 10, 15, 20, 25, 42 years. They're not just going to be here for 1 to 3 years. And unfortunately, we do have a lot of fallout in this industry within the first 3 years. But this would be a way to solve that, is show up at SPAR, show up at your local association.
And as great as it is from a staff perspective to have familiar faces walk in the door, it's so much fun to have new faces come in and just be able to meet new people and really see people expand their networks within the membership. But we enjoy getting to know folks too and just learning what makes you tick, what makes you involved. I mean, the gamut runs wide in terms of if you have an interest, there's probably something here that can match what your interest is.
And that works two ways. I mean, you look at our staff, we have very little turnover on our staff here at SPAR. Most everybody is pretty tenured. And I think that that's just indicative of what SPAR is too, is it's a great community that you want to be a part of. Even our staff wants to stay, and I think that that is very telling as well. We've had a couple turnover, but that was due to retirement. It wasn't even due to the economy or anything like that. So I think that's imperative too, especially in today's marketplace.
Sure.
It's fun to walk in the door and they say hi with your name.
Yeah.
It's
like cheers.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not around, as much as I used to be, but still, it's kind of cool when the door opens and they say hi, Mike.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like, I'm making a difference in this. But I think that, if we looked at the stats, those that have made the decision to get involved truly have a much greater chance of success in this business, because it's really, you've used the word career in a sentence, and give back. And again, if you didn't pick here, but you did something else, anything you picked, that involvement means career.
Yeah.
Again, leaving the house, getting out there and touching people.
Yep. Put your money where your mouth is.
Right. And I know we're talking a lot about coming in the door, welcoming new faces. But SPAR also is in the process right now of wanting to get out to offices. We have a new CEO, since last July of 2024, Gabe Walsh, and he really is really kind of putting his action and words together to get out and get on the road, go to offices, tell people about SPAR, but really also he's calling it a listening tour. He wants to hear from members what people need, what they want. So whether it's the office visit or a one-on-one coffee visit, just reach out to SPAR. He would love to get out there and be able to meet you and talk to you and kind of find out where you're at and what you want from SPAR as a resource.
And I think that's another great thing about SPAR, is it really shows a character of, from the top down of what we're looking for. And Gabe has made it his mission to meet everybody where they're at, coming into the offices and talking to people and seeing what their needs are and what the value of SPAR is. I think that's going to be a really exciting program to grow. And it just shows what type of leadership we have here too, of somebody that's willing to stop what he's doing in his busy day and come to your office and see what you're doing. And I think that's going to be really telling on where we are in the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Sure.
Well, we have Gabe scheduled to come into our office in June, so we're all excited about that. And I had my first meeting with Gabe. He said, let's go to lunch and get to know each other. And he wanted to understand St. Paul better, so we went to the Gopher Bar, had a coney like you would have there, and I just wanted to make sure he understood the basics of what St. Paul is all about. So.
And that is St. Paul.
That is St. Paul. Actually, I was surprised some staff didn't come with once they heard it was the Gopher Bar that we were going to.
That's awesome. So what else? What are we missing here that we want to make sure we capture in this podcast conversation?
My big thing is be committed. I'll make my plug for RPAC. Understand that part of being in this business is being at the table. And RPAC, I'm the chair of the state RPAC committee, and I passionately believe that there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and you have to be at the table. So being a contributor to RPAC is huge and valuable. $50 is all we ask for your contributor. We'd love to teach you about the other pieces of it and being a major investor and all that, but you got to be at the table first, and you have to understand that advocacy is so huge to what we're doing. And so, if anybody ever wants to just sit and talk, I'd meet you at the Gopher Bar and love to tell you more about why that stuff's so important.
And I think for me, it's just I've been with a small brokerage, I've been with a large brokerage, I've been with a medium-sized brokerage, and everybody runs their business a little bit differently. But at the end of the day, we are all members of SPAR. And so it's easy to come here and talk about real estate. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what color your logo is or who you are working with, but it does matter that you uphold the brand of a realtor.
And that's the key word. And again, we've got options now where you could just have MLS services. And I can't imagine not having the word realtor. I think there's nothing more special than being able to say, I am a realtor.
Yeah.
And so, that's the reason that we fight so hard for our industry is that we really believe in what we're doing and that we do it right.
And it all starts here.
And Brian, you reminded me of something else that I've heard from members. You may be competitors when you're out on the field and helping a client to find a home, but when you come to SPAR, you're really peers and you learn from each other. And it feels like that competition, it doesn't exist here. It really is a great resource to just learn from each other, make a friend, and have somebody that you can connect with in the business in different ways.
That's so true. And I think the vast majority of us that have been around for a while, you look at who your friends are, and I would venture to say at least 50% of them are realtors or somebody that you've met in the industry. And that is the most magical thing about being in the real estate industry, is it really is a community within itself.
Yeah, it is. I mean, again, that is who our friends are. That's who we get to know.
Well, it's great. And I have really enjoyed getting to know so many realtors who, I'm not in the business in terms of what you guys do, but just being able to get to know and understand the importance of everything you do. When I took this job, I thought I'm going to be in a place that kind of helps people buy and sell homes. And it's just so much more. I love the community impact. I love seeing all the opportunity. And I've really loved hearing what both of you have to share with everything.
Thank you.
It was fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.